Okay, an API example. Yeah. To really understand how APIs can be used to provide data and services, yeah, we look at the two options for booking online reservation. The first option use the website of a specific airline. Using the airline website, the user enter the information to make the reservation request. Okay, and the website interact directly with the airline own database and provide the user with information matching the user request. Okay, so this is the one. Yeah. Okay, so get the information and return to the request. All right, this is a API example. Okay, a travel site, yeah, can access this same information, right? So instead of any user like us, so travel site can access also this information, not only from a specific airline, but variety of airline. In this case, yeah, the user enter the similar reservation information, right? The travel service website interact with the various airline databases using API provided by each airlines. So the travel service, yeah, use each airline API to request information from that specific airline. And then it display the information from all the airlines on its web page. The API act as a kind of messenger, right, between the requesting application and the application on the server, yeah, that provide data or service. Okay, so the message from the requesting application to the server where the data reside is known as an API call. Okay, this one. Okay, they will call to each of the databases from each of the airlines and get information and return, finally return to the website. All right. Okay, open internal and partners API. An important consideration when developing an API is the distinction between open, internal, and partners API. Yeah. What is the open API or public API? These API are publicly available, can be used with no restriction because these API are public. Many API providers require the user to get a free key token prior to use the API. This is to help control the number of API requests they receive and process. Next is internal or private API. These API that are used by an organization or company to access data and services for internal use only. An example of an internal API is allowing authorized salespeople access to internal sales data on their mobile devices. And next, what is the partner APIs? These are API that are used between company and business partner or contractors to facilitate business between them. The business partner must have a license, or other form of permission to use the API. A travel service using an airline API is an example of partner API. So type of web services API. A web service is a service, that is available over the internet using www or World Wide Web. There are 4 types of web service APIs. First, SOAP, SOAP, yeah. Second is REST. Third one is XML RPC. Fourth one, JSON RPC. Okay, SOP means simple object, access protocol. REST means representational state transfer. And for XML RPC is extensible markup language remote procedure call. And for JSON RPC means JavaScript object notation remote procedure call. Okay. So among of these, okay, we can see the different, like based on characteristic. Okay. First, data format. Okay. For XML, For SOP, we call XML. For REST, we have JSON, XML, YAML, and others. And for XML RPC, we have XML, and for JSON, we normally use JSON format, And for SOP, it was released 1998. Okay, REST, it been introduced around 2000, and XML RPC 1998, and JSON RPC for 2005. Okay, and the strengthen for each of that SOP well established. Currently, we still use this. And for REST, we have the flexible formatting and most widely used also, and well established, and also simplicities, and similar for recent one is a JSON RPC. So this is for a type of web services API, Okay, next for 14.4, which is REST, or REST. Okay, this video we cover the following issue. First, execute a REST API request, and web browser, which is we will use HTTP. We use command line for curl CURL, and application we use Postman, and also the programming language will be in Python, Java, Ruby, and many more languages. All right.
REST is a framework for creating web APIs built on HTTP and HTTPS. REST-conf is a REST-like API or protocol for managing and configuring network devices like routers and switches using HTTP. It uses Yang data modeling and netconf-defined data stores. So how do you execute a REST API request? Well, there's different ways you can do it. You could use your web browser using an HTTP request right from the address bar. You could use a command line tool like curl, do a curl command. You could use an application or program like Postman, or you could use a programming language like Python, JavaScript, Ruby, and many others. RESTful APIs use HTTP client-server request and response methods. The typical methods for HTTP and REST are POST, when you're going to create content onto the web server, GET, when you want to make a request for information from the API or from the web server, PUT, when you're sending data to the server, patch, when you're updating information or making a small change, or delete when you're deleting a resource. The POST, GET, PUT, patch, and delete methods all follow what's called CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. Now, REST APIs use universal resource identifiers. It's similar to a URL, but identifies a specific resource. Let's take a look. And here you have the API server over here. It has the HTTP protocol named, and then the server location with the domain name. You have the resource that you're going to access. This would be the API information specific to that server. Then you have the query itself. This is your API query. And in this case, it's specifying the format, which is JSON, that there's going to be a key. Now this would say key equals, and then you'd have the public or guest key, or the key that you requested from the server itself, and the parameters which filter your query. In this case, we're going to MapQuest, and we're interested in getting information from San Jose, California to Monterey, California, and we're trying to get directions from here to there. And that needs to be in the parameters for this API query. Let's take a look at an API query in action. Let's practice doing REST API calls using different tools. First off, using the web browser, I can do an HTTP GET API call by just pasting the URI into the address bar and hitting return. And with this API, all I need to do is provide the IP address and that I want JSON data returned, and then it gives me the location based on the IP address. The region is Texas, country US, and then the organization is Cisco Systems Incorporated. Now I can execute the same API call from the command line. I'll go to the command line and I'll use the curl tool, provide the same URI to call the API, and you can see that it returns the information. Now API calls, REST API calls, can also be done programmatically using JavaScript. In this case, I have a tool where I can put my code into one window and it'll return out of the other. This is some JavaScript where I'm going to do a request, and I'm going to do my GET request. There is the API URI. I just hit run, and it returns the information that I've asked for in the JavaScript. I can do the same thing using Python. Here is that same API call, but this time formatted in Python, where I execute the Python code in this web browser window, and then it's returned here. So I'll hit run, and you can see it's returned.
All right. Okay. So REST and RESTful API. Web browser use HTTP or HTTPS to request, or we're using a GET a web page. Yeah. If successfully requested, which is the success code is 200. Yeah. Web server respond to GET request. Yeah. With an HTML coded web page. Simply stated, yeah, REST API is an API that works on top of the HTTP protocol. It defines a set of functions developers can use to perform requests and receive responses via HTTP protocols such as GET and POST. Conforming to the constraint of the REST architecture is generally referred to as being RESTful. An API can be considered RESTful if it has the following features. First, client server. So it means the client handle the front end and the server handle the back end. Either can be replaced independently of the others. Second, stateless. No client data is stored on the server between requests. The session state is stored on the client. And cacheable. Client can catch responses to improve performance. Yeah. Okay, this is the following features of RESTful. A RESTful implementation. A RESTful web service is implemented using HTTP. It is a collection of resources with 4 defined aspects, which is URI, or Uniform Resource Identifier, for the web service, such as this http://example.com/resources. The data format supported by the web service, this is often JSON, yeah, YAML, or XML, but could be any other data format that is valid hypertext standard. The set operations supported by the web service using HTTP method. The API must be hypertext driven. Yeah. RESTful API use a common HTTP method including post, get, put, patch, and also delete. As shown in the following table, these correspond to RESTful operation like create, read, update, and delete. Yeah. So HTTP method like post, okay, in RESTful operation, which is create, yeah, get, normally we use in HTTP. So for the RESTful mean read, yeah, put and page, patch actually for update, and then delete. So the same thing in the RESTful operation. All right. URI, URN, and URL. Web resources and web services such as RESTful API are identified using URI. Yeah, URI is a string of character that identify a specific network resource. URI, yeah, has two specialization, URN and also URL. URN means Uniform Resource Name, and for URL stand for Uniform Resource Locator. So for URN, actually identify only the namespace of the resource like web page, document, image, etc., without reference to the protocol. Meanwhile, for URL, define the network location of a specific resource. HTTP or HTTPS URLs are typically used with browsers. Protocols such as FTP, SFTP, SSH, and others can use URL. A URL using SFTP might look like this example. Okay, all right. These are the part of URI. Okay, HTTP semicolon, yeah, and also web.example.com/author/book.html and hash page 155 and colon. So from here, all right, they will separated by what is the protocol? Protocol is HTTPS, this one. Okay, or other protocols such as FTP, SFTP, and so on, they will recognize to the beginning of this. Yeah, and the host name, this one, we can see, look back this. Okay, this is the host name, and path. Okay, like a directory or path, they call here the path here, and also the specifics, which specific they're going to access is this one. All right, okay. Anatomy of RESTful request. In a RESTful web service, a request made to a resource URI will elicit a response. The response will be payload typically formatted in JSON, but could be HTML, XML, or some other format. The figure shows the URI for map request, direction API, like this example. Okay, they're requesting a direction, so they make a request. Okay, the API request is for direction from St. Joe's, California to Montreal, California. So they're asking for the direction from St. Joe's to Montreal. Yeah. Okay. So this is the what we call this, the instruction. Okay, we have API server, the URI, URL, you can see this is the first, they request the server, yeah, the server, and then the resource, same like from the previous slide, explaining each of the until we get the information that we want, like this, yeah, parameter, they will send query to the server, okay, according to this format. All right. Okay. All right. So these are the different part of the API requests. Okay. We have API server, as I told you, API server, resources, query, yeah, format according to the languages, okay, and key and parameter specific to each of the request parameter what we're going for. Based on this example, they're requesting a direction from St. Joe's to Montreal. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Many RESTful API, including public API, require a key. Yeah. Require a key. The key is used to identify the source of the request. Here are some reasons why an API provider may require a key. First, to authenticate the source to make sure they are authorized to use the API. And then next, to limit the number of people using the API and to limit the number of requests per user to better capture and track the data being requested by users. And to gather information on the people using API. Okay, note the map request API does require a key. Search for the internet for the URL to obtain a map request key. Use the search parameter developer.mapRequest. So this is parameter search. You can also search the internet for the current URL that outline the map request privacy policy. Okay. So RESTful API application. Many websites and applications use API to access information and provide service for their customer. Some RESTful API requests can be made by typing in the URI from within a web browser. The map request direction API is an example of this. A RESTful API request can also be made in other ways. Developer website. Developer often maintain website that include information about the API parameter information and usage example. This site may also allow the user to perform the API request within the developer web page by entering in the parameters and other information. And Postman is an application, for testing and using REST API. It contains everything required for constructing and sending REST API requests, including entering query parameter and key. Next is the API. Can also be called from within a Python program. This allows for possible automation, customization, and app integration of the API. Next is a network operating system using protocols such as net configuration or netconf, and RESTconf, Network operating system are beginning to provide an alternative method for configuration, monitoring, and management. Next is 14.5 configuration management tools. Here you will see a video, regarding compare configuration management tool, including Ansible, Puppet, Chef, and also Salt Stack, and review play task module parameter and variable in a sample play books. Okay, have a look.
Network automation is pretty difficult when you're working with traditional network configuration tools like the Cisco iOS Command Line Interface, or CLI. Now, it has the ability to run some TCL or Tickle scripts to automate some tasks, but generally it's considered very difficult. Network automation is also pretty difficult using SNMP, or Simple Network Management Protocol. Although you have the ability to do remote network configurations, and it's excellent for monitoring the network, to push configurations to end devices and work with SNMP is generally considered to be labor intensive and difficult. Network automation today is developing rapidly thanks to networks moving to the cloud and the advent of virtualization. Today we have RESTful APIs and configuration management tools that can help to automate network configuration and other network tasks. Configuration management tools like Ansible, Puppet, Chef, and SaltStack. These configuration management tools typically use Python or Ruby. Ansible uses Python and YAML, whereas Puppet and Chef use Ruby and SaltStack uses Python. These management tools use recipes to script changes, automate changes over the network. Ansible uses playbooks, Puppet uses manifests, Chef uses cookbooks, and SaltStack uses pillars. This is an example of an Ansible playbook that I got from DevNet at developer.cisco.com. You can see that it has plays. Here we can see two plays. One, we're going to report host name and operating system details, and the second play, report network details of servers. The hosts are set up in the host file, and those define the actual IP address or domain names of the devices. For tasks, we have on the first play 2 tasks: get the host name from the server, and then get the operating system. In the second play, we have 3 tasks. We want to find out what the default IPv4 interface is. We want to retrieve the network routes using a netstack command. We're going to put that information into a variable and then show that information with the network routes installed. To see the results of these tasks, we're going to use the debug modules, and modules can also use parameters. In this case, we're going to be using the message parameters. Lastly, we have the variables. The variables are surrounded by double curly braces. Now you can retrieve variables that are built in. These are facts within the system. Or you could set your own variables. In this case, we're registering a variable called routes right here, and then we're going to use that variable in the message parameter in the debug module. With the message parameter, we'll call that route variable. Let's take a look at this in action. I'm using CentOS 7 as my developer workstation. I'm going to cat out the example1.yaml file and take a look at our playbook.